But we are going to talk baseball right now. That will kind of talk baseball, right? Now, we had been told, you and I, that you got to be prepared. You must be prepared because some big names in Major League Baseball are not going to show up. They're going to bow out. They're not going to take part in the 2020 season. It's going to happen. And over the weekend, I guess this would count as a couple of big names that popped up on our radar. A pair of former Cy Young winners have decided to not partake in the 2020 baseball season. They are giving up. Now, I don't know if you saw this or not. Maybe you did not. Felix Hernandez, who, come on, let's be honest here. He's sucked for years. He was trying to latch on and reinvent himself with the Atlanta Braves. He's decided not to do that anymore. And David Price, that guy, David Price, has said, hasta la vista, arrivederci, to Los Angeles this summer. Now, with all due respect to King Felix, who has been stealing money for years in Seattle, and they finally got rid of him, and now he went to Atlanta. Don't bury the lead, my man. All right, we're not going to bury the lead. This is all about David Price leaving the Dodgers hanging. Or is he leaving the Dodgers hanging? He came over from the Boston Red Sox in the offseason, the late offseason blockbuster trade before the apocalypse. So let us discuss the question: should the Dodgers be upset with David Price? Do the Dodgers have a right to be upset? Now, they're saying they're not. They're saying they're not upset with David Price. The way I look at it, they shouldn't be upset. They should be happy that David Price is giving up on the season. And my thoughts on this, you've got basic math, rainy day, and full deck. And we will put all these things into the pot, and we will stir it up. And we'll do that for approximately 10, 15 minutes or so. So, David Price, who is not someone I was excited to watch play and pitch for the Dodgers here. He's a guy that the Dodgers didn't even really want. I mean, let's call it like it is here. David Price was the bounty the Dodgers had to pay to get Mookie Betts, and so they were willing to take David Price on. And I was trying to explain this to a couple of my buddies who love the Blue Crew, that David Price's decision is a net positive. This is not a net negative. And they tried to play devil's advocate and say, oh, no, he's a world champion, Ben. Clearly, not knowing my position on the Championship Defenders League, that is generally the number one tell in my experience that a fan is an uneducated fan, that the fan's a dummy. When their defense of said player is, he's a champion. Past results do not guarantee future outcomes, just like on Wall Street. And never been a member of that Championship Defenders League. That's not how I roll. And I am of the mindset that you should not be living in the past, which many people, the uneducated fan, hey, he's a champion. People who live in the past are failures. You're going to fail forever if you live in the past. So tell me what you're going to do in the future, not what you have done in the past. I don't care about what you've done in the past. I want to know what you've done in the future. And David Price is absolutely free to raise the white flag. I don't want to say that he's not. He obviously is. We are also free to point out that this is actually going to have no bearing on whatever happens to the Dodgers in 2020, this mini sprint, not a marathon, a sprint of a 2020 season. So, and I'm just talking about this in terms of basic math, which is Maller math, basic math. This is what's known as addition by subtraction, is what this is. David Price's on-field performance would have been okay. He's been trending the wrong way. His earned run average has ticked up each of the last 3 seasons in Boston. And the Red Sox, here's all you need to know about David Price. The Red Sox were so giddy when they got the Dodgers to take Price off their hands. He was such a liability to that franchise that they agreed to pay a big chunk of David Price's contract just so he wouldn't contaminate the Red Sox anymore. They're like, get out of here, please. Think about that. Think about David Price, former Cy Young winner, world champion. The Red Sox are like, please, I'll give you Mookie Betts, but you got to take David Price off our hands. You got his reputation precedes him. He's a malcontent. That is who David Price has been. He habitually complains. He's unhappy, and it infects a negative attitude on whatever team he plays in. This is a fox in the henhouse situation. So the Dodgers are avoiding a fox in the henhouse situation. The kind of ball player that separates and divides a team. Ask Dennis Eckersley what he thinks. A respected relief pitcher and a Cy Young guy himself back in the day and a broadcaster with the Red Sox. Ask Eckersley what he thinks of David Price. David Price, your typical thin-skinned athlete. Now, part B of this, Major League Baseball, like every sport, every legacy sport, is bending over backwards right now with as much safety as possible. And it's never enough. It is never enough. It's just remarkable to see what is going on with the players bitching in basketball and football and baseball across the board. Although hockey, I guess I haven't heard too much of. Maybe I missed it in hockey. But it's never enough, right? I mean, all that falls by the wayside for the players who are complaining. All of the protocols. And this David Price story is a stark reminder. It's not so much about the safety protocols with David Price. They could have the safest game in the world, but he lives in a different zip code, and many of these guys live in a different zip code than the rest of us. And when you're richer than Scrooge McDuck, you are given the freedom to play or not play. If you're unmotivated, if it's too much of a hassle, just tap out. Doesn't matter to you. David Price has not just a decent, he's got an extreme rainy day fund for situations like this. FU money is what they call it, though. And throughout his big league career, he's been well compensated. Price has earned $184 million on field. That's just on field, not endorsements or any of that other stuff, going back to his early days in Tampa and with the Blue Jays and the Tigers and the Red Sox, me oh my. And so it is also a lesson on how slightly out of touch from reality the rest of us have to deal with, the rest of people have to deal with. And specifically, I'm talking about you, the frontline worker. So many of you listen to this show while you're stocking grocery stores and driving trucks and things along those lines. And the frontline employee, which I'm sure they'd like to tap out sometimes. I'm good. I don't need the money. I'm all right. And their protocols. Think about the protocols that professional sports have put in with all the extra testing and all that stuff. And it's not nearly the same if you work at a grocery store. And more importantly, you obviously don't have a rainy day fund to take a year off and look out for your family. Can't do that. It's in the best interest of your family to keep working because you got to bring home the bacon. And it doesn't pay for itself. So listen, Price doesn't have those worries. Again, different zip code. He doesn't have to worry about that kind of stuff. He's fine. And keep in mind, this is the same guy who his claim to fame with the Red Sox was he was such a dedicated baseball player that he actually missed the start against the Yankees because of an addiction to Fortnite. That's a true story. You can look it up, not making it up. He had carpal tunnel syndrome, a mild carpal tunnel syndrome, because he played so many hours of Fortnite that it messed up his hand and the ability to hold and grip the baseball were messed up. So now he doesn't have to worry about working his night job with the Dodgers. He is free. He's free to play as many video games as you want. Feed the addiction. Feed the addiction. All right, last word on this. So back to the Dodgers here. Then we started this, David Price not going to play. He's decided he's not going to show up. Fine. But the Dodgers, they didn't want, as we said, David Price. They don't need David Price, and that's why this is nothing for the Dodgers. Like they have a full deck of cards in terms of starting pitching, and you look in the back, in the bowels of Dodger Stadium, they have a treasure chest of talent, and many of these guys, now some of them are inexperienced, some of them have been around the block, but they all have the skill set to dominate, and they just have to make the right choice here. They go into the stockpile, and they have to make sure they make the right decision on who to bring in. And whether it's, I'd like to see Dustin May slide on into the Dodgers rotation and see if he can find some consistency. One of the top young pitchers in baseball. Let's see if he can blossom here with the opportunity. If not May, the Dodgers have Ross Stripling, who they tried to trade, and they didn't. Worked out well now. And Tony Gonsolin also in that rotation. They even signed Jimmy Nelson, the old Milwaukee Brewer, who's been injured. He's a big fat guy. Played for the Milwaukee
Never
Brewers.
heard of him.
So the point is, David Price, you're not going to be missed. No one's going to be upset you're not playing for the Dodgers. You're not even going to be noticed. So I'm glad. That's actually a good thing because he won't rub that sourpuss attitude on the other players on the team. The Dodgers have an embarrassment of riches. So they are in good shape in this department. They are. They're in